When we say that God dwells in us, we inevitably ask, how beings like, from an animal origin, so far from God, could have something as perfect as God Himself within us? How would that be? As was said in previous videos, there is a huge number of beings who fulfill this not obvious gap between us mere mortals and perfect God. As the man is being farther away from God, God Himself could have resided in itself? Even more, those other beings, who are closest to perfection, possess this gift. Why is that? This response is one of the greatest mysteries of all existence, and not just for us. God is so merciful, who decided through His free will, donate Himself, providing a spark of Himself to each one of the more distant beings, the evolutionary mortals. This spark is known as the divine monitor or thought adjuster at the Urantia book. But even with that name, He does not command our thoughts. They just make us feel this undeniable presence of God in our lives, and to adjust and to help us to recognize the divine values, among other things of greater value. Despite this communication is indirect and not fully discernible, one will be able to recognize right from wrong. But remember that God also gave us free will, which makes us decide to accept or not the fact that deep within each of us, we know that God exists, but we cannot prove its existence, even through the most advanced science. Thus, the fact and deny the presence of this trimmer is also part of the thought that free will given to us. The presence of the thought adjuster that does not guarantee that we will make all the best decisions, or we become divine because of that, because we are not yet fused to it, but He certainly guides us and comforts us in an indescribable way. Communication with Him is something very subtle and careful. Try to differentiate this communication with acts of will of our own consciousness can be a big mistake. Contrary to popular belief, this contact is most likely not in a state of trance or subconscious, but the conscious decisions of value, or in a superconsciousness state. To understand better what is the thought adjuster, we must also understand our own composition. Man is composed of material body, mind, personality, soul and spirit, and we will quickly see what each is. The material body, as we know, does not follow us on our accessional career. When there is death in the flesh, the body stays at the planet of origin, which was borrowed just to serve as a transitional vehicle for our life in this form of matter energy that we are today. The mind is what accurately depicts the harvest of temporal decisions which the mortal is doing. It is not what the mind understands, but what the mind wants to comprehend that matters, is not the fact that man is conscious of God that leads to ascend in the universe, but the fact that he aspires to God. Personality is the only unchanging reality amid a constantly changing experience in the creature. It unifies the other factors associated with individuality. The soul is what man builds higher values in life. It is the part of man that reflects the self, which sees the spiritual side and that elevates the human being above the level of the animal world. It is the attainment of moral choice, spiritual fulfillment, the ability to know God and the urge to be like Him. Personality identity survives only through the survival of the soul, and the soul, but God is so merciful that everything with spiritual value survives the death in the flesh, in one way or another. And finally the spirit. He is nothing more than the thought adjuster that resides in us. The fact that the adjuster resides in us, it is something truly divine, but a possible merger with the thought adjuster is rather one of the most beautiful things in all existence. And this fusion is not only possible but also desirable. In this process, the development of a soul is fundamental. Talking about God is the most complex subject of all existence, but to understand a little more, read book and be part of study groups is fundamental. Enjoy your thought adjuster, realize that God truly resides in you. Understand how wonderful it is to see a mortal being guided by a divine fitter, doing the will of the Father and building a wonderful and full experiments path. Have a great reading and see you at the next video.